Hello Internet, welcome back to Tromsø Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the Abyss, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. Those who follow my channel a little might have noticed that I've been speaking less about movies of late. This is because I decided I wanted to get to know Indian cinema a little bit. And because I have no context and no knowledge about Indian cinema, it didn't make sense for me to try to talk about Indian films in isolation. I have very little to compare them with. So I waited until I'd watched 10 Indian movies and I thought I would talk about them all together in this video, kind of just talk you briefly through the 10 films that I saw in the past couple of months. Context for this, years ago I saw the movie Devdas, which is from the early 2000s, and totally blew my mind, like visually, musically, emotionally, massive, epic. It's a kind of broken-hearted love story. I read the novel subsequently, and the novel is very slight compared to the film. And this was like my only knowledge of Indian cinema. It has two of the biggest stars of Indian cinema in it, both of whom I'll mention in this video. But it's kind of stood as this incredible piece of cinema in my mind for years, and I've never really had any context for it. And then a couple of months ago, I realized, I'm sort of stuck in a bit of an Anglophone, American, European loop with cinema, and I wanted to branch out a little. So I discovered that there are lots of Indian movies online, especially Hindi films, and I started watching them. So a lot of what I say about these movies is probably going to be wrong or out of context because I don't know much about them. And this is actually very exciting because for me, it's like starting to watch cinema, getting into film all over again. Like when I was a teenager, I remember watching, classics and movies that were just on TV and kind of starting to orient myself in movies. And it was sort of more exciting then than it is once you've seen a lot of film. It's a bit like that watching Indian movies for me because I kind of go from one film to the next with no real understanding of how they are related to one another or what genres I'm watching half the time. So it's really fascinating and enjoyable. A little warning here is that I'm probably going to pronounce a lot of things wrong, and I mean no disrespect, it's just that I don't speak Hindi. So names of places, names of movies, names of people will probably be butchered. I'm doing my best. And I wanted to say before I get into the 10 films I watched, just a couple of things about things I've noticed about Indian cinema based on the few films that I've seen. A lot of Indian films seem to be very long by kind of Western standards. Like most films are over 2 hours long, and it's not unusual for them to be nearly 3 hours or in fact over 3 hours long. This also is reflected in the narrative structure, where many of the longer Indian films have a first act or a first and second act, but really a first act that lasts an hour. So you'll have a kind of establishing story, and then you'll have an inciting incident after an hour, and then the next hour and a half, 2 hours, will be the main part of the story, and there'll be a good 30 minutes of climax towards the end. They're also longer, some of them, because I'll come back to this also, but many Indian films seem to be quite experimental or daring with genre, so they'll mash a lot of different things together. And this means that there are often kind of set pieces, or in what they call masala films, there'll be musical numbers, but even in other types of movies they'll have kind of comedic sections. So tonally it's quite unusual for a Western viewer, where we're maybe used to films doing one or two genres, one or two tones at a time. And another thing that I noticed that I didn't realize that's sort of interesting is they often do all of the thanks at the beginning. Like they'll have a black screen and they'll thank the sponsors, and then they'll dedicate the movie to somebody, and they'll have like some information about funding, all before they have the sort of opening credits of the film or the opening sequence. So the first movie that I watched that kind of got me interested, got me going on this, is a movie called Bulbbul, which is from 2020, and the director is Anbita Dutt. In this film, a child bride becomes a charismatic, somewhat mysterious woman who is running a household estate, presiding over a household. Meanwhile, an avenging goddess is killing the violent and patriarchal men of the local area. There is a theme in Hindi cinema of a childhood friend returning from abroad, often from England, where they've been studying at Oxford or Cambridge, and either becoming the love interest or in Devdas, being too late and becoming brokenhearted. This film subverts this trope. The main character's childhood friend or childhood love interest comes back from England, but in an attempt to uphold the patriarchal system locally, so he becomes more of a villain. There are no twists to speak of in Bulbbul. It's like very predictable, and this, I guess, is because it's a fairy tale. Like, it's a parable. It's not really supposed to surprise you. You can tell from very early in the movie what is happening. So although it's sort of supernatural and gothic in nature, it's not mysterious. But visually, it's this crazy kind of Indian Gothic with like red skies, very lush soundtracks. It has a mix of supernatural and social horror or themes. I was quite impressed by it. I did find some of the CGI, like especially towards the end, a little bit distracting, a little bit unfortunate. But on the whole, it was a good opening for me. It was a good way in. Somebody who likes horror films, likes genre films, and also likes films that have like a clear social theme. And I noticed that a lot of the movies I watched did have themes about women's place in Indian society, about social hierarchy, about conformity, the pressure of family, and this film was no exception. So the next film I watched was from 2024, and it was a film called Maharaj, directed by Siddharth P. Malhotra. This was a kind of period drama in which the titular Maharaj exploited women from his local Hindu community, his local congregation. He was a kind of guru, and he preyed especially on young and impressionable women. Junaid Khan plays a young man whose heart is broken when his fiancée is exploited and manipulated by the Maharaj, and she dies as a consequence. He then leads a local religious rebellion through journalism and activism, trying to point out to the local people that they can respect their faith and worship without necessarily bowing to the authority of the Maharaj or the local religious leaders. Jaideep Alwat is really good as the titular villain. He's kind of a smug, narcissistic individual. There are some really striking visuals in the movie, and it has a strong message against religious corruption, social corruption, and the true faith. I liked it when I watched it, but in the context of some of the other movies I watched subsequently, it seems a little one note. Then I watched a movie from this year called Tu Yaa Main by Beloy Nambiar. This is a horror thriller about an up-and-coming rapper from the slums of Mumbai and a lonely influencer, a rich girl influencer, who the two of them together become trapped in a swimming pool where they are threatened by killer crocodiles. In many ways, like in the themes, the content, the presentation, the editing, this film was maybe the most Western influenced and also contemporary feeling of all of the movies that I watched. At the same time, though, in classic Bollywood style, the first act lasted an hour and kind of had a different genre from the subsequent part of the film. So the first hour is quite an engaging and sympathetic kind of romantic comedy with elements of social drama, and then it transforms into this crocodile thriller for the next hour and a half. I actually preferred the first hour. Okay, I'm going to pronounce everything about this movie wrong, and I'm going to have to read it. The next movie was called Gangubai Kathiawadi. It was from 2022, and the director is Sanjay Leela Bansali. The movie was subtitled Mafia Queen, and it's adapted from a chapter in a book called Mafia Queens. It tells the story of a young woman sold into sexual slavery by her fiancé, who subsequently becomes an influential political figure in the local area of the city. She becomes a kind of activist and a protector of local sex workers, and this is a historical drama based on a real individual. This movie is aesthetically beautiful. It has musical dance sequences, it has melodrama, it has romance, it has a section that is done as if it was a silent movie. It has a stunning central performance from Alia Bhatt. It was criticised in some quarters, I read afterwards, for not really showing the true horrors and violence against women, especially sex workers. But I thought in its own way it was pretty radical, and it uses the aesthetic tools of the kind of universe that it builds to convey its message pretty powerfully. Not least, it portrays sex workers with a lot of dignity. It portrays the hypocrisy of a society who are almost reliant upon them, but at the same time condemn them. It shows Hindus and Muslims working together in the black market with a great degree of dignity and respect. There are also two very clearly queer characters, although both of them play roughly villainous roles. That kind of reminds me of how you could only kind of make characters queer coded in Hollywood in the old days if they were being a little more villainous. Disney is famous for this. Reading about this movie online, I learned the term masala movie, and a masala movie is like a big mix of different genres: action, musical, comedy, romance, thriller, all mixed together. And in many ways, it's what we in the West classically think of as a Bollywood film, even though Bollywood just means that it's made in the Hindi-speaking film industry. This film is not strictly speaking a masala movie, but people argue that it's close. I also realised that this movie is made by the same person who made Devdas, which I mentioned in the introduction. And I understand that this person is quite a divisive filmmaker for the Indian audience, but so far I think maybe he's my favourite Indian filmmaker. Having been so impressed by Aaliyah Bhatt in Gangubai Kathiawadi, I became curious to see her in another role. So I found the movie Darlings, which is directed by Jasmeet K. Reen and was released in 2022. This movie is another that shifts tone after the first act. The first act lasts an hour again, and it's a pretty harrowing domestic drama about an abusive relationship for the first hour. Aaliyah Bhatt plays a normal woman living in an apartment complex in Mumbai, whose husband beats her, drinks, and she attempts to remain optimistic about their relationship, believing that he'll stop being violent if he stops drinking or if she becomes pregnant and they have a child. It's a pretty complex depiction of the cycle of abuse and why people remain in abusive relationships, particularly when, as in India, divorce is very stigmatized. This means that the first act to some extent is repetitive because the husband keeps subjecting the lead character to, indignities, violence, terrible behavior, and she keeps trying to find excuses for him or forgiving him or getting close to leaving him and then changing her mind. Aaliyah Bhatt has enough charm that the repetitive nature of a relationship like this doesn't become wearing. This movie has good supporting roles from, and I'm going to have to read their names, Vijay Varma as her smug, manipulative husband, and Shefali Shah as her long-suffering, supporting mother. In the last hour and a half, the movie transitions into a kind of oddball black comedy where the mother and daughter unite to try to turn the tables on the abusive husband. On the whole, I think the movie worked well in both halves, and it took the situation of women in patriarchal, abusive situations seriously enough, at the same time as it provided a certain cathartic release in its second half that compensated for its most harrowing episodes. So having learnt about masala movies, I became interested in this style. I wanted to learn more about it. And in a list of the best masala movies ever made, I found a movie called Darr, which is made by Yash Chopra in 1993. And man, was this movie bizarre. In brief, Sunny Deol plays a macho Navy SEAL who's engaged to wed his young love called Kiran, who is played by Juhi Chawla Mehta. They've got a charming and slightly spicy love song together, and some of the musical sequences are shot in Switzerland, since the movie sets the story in both places, both in India and in Switzerland. Sunil goes and shoots a load of guys on a boat and rescues a diplomat's daughter. Meanwhile, a guy called Raul, who went to school with Kiran, went to college with her, is madly obsessed and dangerously in love with her. So the movie includes elements of almost like Steven Seagal action, a love story, a thriller, a horror, basically all the aspects of a masala movie and more. Rahul is played by Shah Rukh Khan, often called SRK, who is one of Bollywood's biggest stars and who is also the star of the movie Devdas. It's his breakout role, and he absolutely steals this film. He manages to be by far the most interesting and engaging character, while also being terrifyingly unstable. A stalker who is capable of hiding his insanity at the same time as he is terrorizing Kiran. The movie is apparently inspired by Cape Fear, but you have to imagine a version of Cape Fear where Robert De Niro's villain character also has romantic love songs and dances that make him seem like the romantic lead. This has the effect of making the scenes where SRK is cutting Kiran's name into his chest or smashing up the furniture of newlyweds after they've just moved into their apartment even more disturbing. It also has the strange result that you can't really care about or root for the hero, and it doesn't make it any easier that Sunny Deol plays this guy as a kind of charmless misogynist. All the sound and the dialogue is added in post, and it gives it this kind of creepy feeling because, you know, like all the voices are kind of, you can hear that they're close to the mic even if you're far away. When people are walking up a hallway, you hear the footsteps echoing. It's got lots of reverb on it, so it gives it this slightly off surreal feeling. And also, there's quite a lot of violence, and every time someone's hit in the face, it has exactly the same kind of slap sound, like two bits of wood hitting together. And every time someone's punched in the body, a body blow is one single drum hit that's always the same. It gives it almost like a cartoon feeling. This sort of weird, surreal cartoon vibe somehow makes SRK's completely insane performance in the last 30 minutes even more disturbing and unsettling. Because I went from this 1993 film Darr to a 2014 movie called PK, which is directed by Rajkumar Hirani. And at the beginning of this film, a young student named Yagu meets a man in, where are they? They're in Belgium, I think. And she's studying journalism and he's, I think, studying to be a diplomat. They fall in love, but because he's a Pakistani Muslim, her family's guru warns her against the relationship. 5 years later, an alien lands in rural India and somebody steals the remote control that he needs to get his spaceship to return to space. So he travels to Mumbai to try to get it back, and everywhere he goes he's told that only God can help him. So he tries to seek help in the different religions of India, and this is then played to kind of satirical effect where he observes the customs of one religion in the space of a different religion repeatedly and is continuously chased by followers of the different religions and denominations because he's offending them by doing what would be correct down the road in a different temple or mosque. Ultimately disappointed, he concludes that a trickster god has usurped the real god, and when he meets Yagu, they kind of join forces to confront her family's guru towards the end of the movie. The alien is given the name PK because PK is the letters PK sound like the word for tipsy or drunk in Hindi, which is how a lot of people perceive him because of his eccentric behaviour. Amir Khan as PK and Anusha Sharma as Yagu have great chemistry, and the movie is an interesting critique of sectarianism and religious dogma, which shies away from an atheist perspective. It is more about the corruption of the religious impulse. Some things about this movie really didn't work for me, particularly the music, which is more Western influenced. It made sense when they were in Belgium, but when they got back to India and it was still like that, it kind of bugged me. PK, the character, has a really annoying theme that is used a lot. Every time he's like doing something that in the plot of the film is a little eccentric or clownish, he has this music that goes it sort of reminds me of like Mr. Bean or something. I found it annoying. However, despite not really being won over by the aesthetics or the tone of this film, the last act reduced me to tears twice. And this is something that I've experienced in watching Indian cinema, is that it's so much more emotional than a lot of the cinema that I'm used to watching. A lot of these films made me cry, and PK, which wasn't really my vibe, made me cry twice. The next movie has a title that should be easy for me to say because it's 3 letters and I can say them in English, but it's R, the letter R 3 times. It's directed by S.S. Rajamouli, released in 2022, and it's not actually a Hindi film originally, so it's not technically a Bollywood film. It is in the Telugu language, and it's an epic fictionalizing the lives of 2 real Indian freedom fighters who never actually met in real life. And it's kind of like a sort of story about how it might have been if they had met before they became known in their fight against colonialism. In the universe of the movie, these 2 guys are superhero type characters, and they're also symbolic of 2 figures from Hindu mythology. The character Rama Raju is based on Alluri Sitaramu Raju, who was a freedom fighter, and Rama, who is one of the avatars of Vishnu. The other character, who is called Bhim, represents Komarama Bhim, as well as Bhima, who is from the Hindu epic Mahabharata. And Bhima and Rama, the 2 mythical figures, they never meet in the epics either. So this film is like combining 2 mythologies and 2 real life characters in this kind of epic superhero type situation. If it sounds insane, it really is. Also, Rama Raju represents fire and Bhim represents water, and this symbolism is really used to great effect in the film. And the 2 characters have a beautiful, heartfelt friendship portrayed very convincingly by the 2 lead actors. So the entire movie is about the Indian people fighting against British colonialism, and it has some really striking imagery. For example, there's a scene where Bhim releases a load of Indian animals, wild animals from the forest, into a kind of very sculptured, enclosed mansion garden that the colonialists are living within. The visuals are like nothing you've ever seen. The violence is shocking. The music and dance is sheer spectacle. The emotions are almost overwhelming. And it also has a very small but charming supporting role from Alia Bhatt, who I mentioned earlier. As an English guy living in Norway most of my adult life, the politics of this movie are quite difficult for me to assess. The fight against colonialism, against colonialists, is obviously one that's very easy to sympathise with. At the same time, I felt like this was slightly undermined by the fact that contemporary Indian nationalism is so authoritarian and can be so conservative and frightening, and also sectarian nationalism within India. So I don't really know the context for that, but it certainly made me a little uncomfortable at times. And my friend Harpo also made me aware of the fact that in the closing sequence, which is this really wild, beautiful dance and singing number, or like on a sort of sound stage, they are showing images of Indian revolutionaries behind them, and they markedly omit any of the non-violent ones. Still, on a level of pure cinema, this film is fascinating and it's wild and it's unique. So especially if you are interested in kind of like very sort of intense multiplex action based types of movies, which is not normally my thing, definitely see it. But even I, who I'm not really into that normally, it was just like, you have to submit to it. It blew me away. I then watched another movie from this year, which is called Maa Behen, which was directed by Suresh Triveni. And I watched this because it had Madhuri Dixit in it, who is from Devdas. She plays a mother who calls her adult daughters, who are somewhat estranged, in the middle of the night to get them to come to her house to help her with a situation that she has. The movie explores scapegoating, sensationalist reality television, sexism, family dynamics. It's a sometimes farcical black comedy. Visually, it's a little less ambitious than some of the other films that I've talked about. Certainly, for example, less ambitious than RRR, but it's quietly creative in its own way. And Madhuri Dixit is brilliant as a self-involved but ultimately likable mother of these 2 very different daughters. In many ways, you could say that it's thematically similar to the movie Darlings, but it doesn't have the big tonal shift that Darlings has, and it's not harrowing in the same way. It's also a film that takes the story of the mother and a woman of her generation a little more seriously, centers her a bit more in the narrative. I really liked it. Having watched that, I wanted to see more of Marjorie Dixit, so I went 19 years back in time to 2007 and watched Aaja Nachle by Anil Mehta. This is a movie where she plays an Indian choreographer living in New York who returns to the village where she grew up because her dance teacher has died. She discovers when she gets there that the space where they used to learn and perform is threatened by the development of a shopping mall and that none of the local people have done anything to defend it. She has also been shamed by the fact that she moved to America with an American guy instead of marrying the person that her parents wanted to marry her to. She tries to save the theatre space by setting up a theatre performance using the local people as the crew and the performers. A lot of this film has the feel of a sort of daytime, primetime TV movie, and it's quite sort of careful not to be too radical. Like there's a woman who wants to be in the play and her husband won't let her, but then he feels bad, and the way that he solves that is not by letting her do it, it's by him performing in the play. So it doesn't want to be too subversive, but at the same time it really is a hymn to the importance of art and culture as a community force and as an opposition to the forces of corporate capitalism and homogenization. It's also about the importance of tradition and how tradition can be a force for progress and for unity. But the thing about this movie is that the last 20 minutes is the performance of the play. And it's like if you watched Euphoria season 2 when they had the school play, it's like that. Like there's no taking account of what might be realistic in terms of budget or timing or set design or costume changes. It's done like it's a film on a soundstage. And honestly, it's incredible. It's incredible. So this film is worth watching if not for Marjorie Dixit's extremely charming performance, then for this really weird section of like traditional mythical theatre performance mixed in with contemporary music at the end of the film. We finally got to the 10th film that I've watched. This one I watched yesterday. It's directed by Rohit Shetty in 2013 and the movie is called Chennai Express. Shah Rukh Khan is back. He is playing a cowardly, selfish and fairly annoying individual who, like his character in Darr, is called Rahul. It's confusing because he's clearly quite old in this film, about it being done in 2013, but he's playing a kind of guy who seems young, and he also looks and moves like a young guy, but his nose kind of gives the aging away. He accidentally gets involved with the daughter of a South Indian crime lord. She's played by Deepika Padukone. I'm sure I've butchered her name. She's great. SRK plays his role with a kind of constant manic absurdity. She is a little more subtle, although she does play a little broad some of the time. She's got a bit more sensitivity, and there are some scenes where they have very beautiful chemistry together, even though both of their characters are written just as terrible people. This movie, Chennai Express, is an absolute mess. 30 minutes are very enjoyable, very funny. I was like prepared for this film to be brilliant, but it really loses its way narratively. It's all over the place. Despite this, there are scenes that are genuinely moving. The tone is high fast a lot of the time. The musical numbers are frenetic, very exciting. It has gleefully unnecessary and ridiculous stunts. It's got a lot of violence. To me, this is like the other movie that seemed to be a masala movie. It's not as attractive visually to me as a lot of the other movies that I watched in this series of Indian movies that I was watching. But it does have some very creative camera work, and it's got some good editing, and then it's got some terrible editing. I don't really understand what's going on with it. The lead performances kind of carry the movie, along with the music, which is quite strange. So I liked it, but I don't know if I would recommend it. It's kind of crass, but it's also unashamed. If you've watched this far on this video about Indian movies, I commend you, and I also appreciate you. It's amazing that you sat here and listened to me talking about my new special interest. Please, if you know about Indian movies, give me some recommendations. I would love to hear about it. If you don't know about Indian movies, let me know in the comments what you thought about me talking about them for such a long period of time. I will come back and talk about some more Indian movies, I guarantee it, but I probably won't do it in a big row next time. Maybe I'll just do a couple, or I'll do one at a time. Thanks so much for listening to me. I'll be back soon. I'm going to talk about Backrooms. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to see it very soon. I'm going to talk about books I'm going to read at the summer. Come and see me. I like hanging out with you. Take care for now.